Welcome into WFRV Plus Sports Night. As always, I'm Kyle Malls. I'm pleased to be joined by one handsome fella.
Oh,
Everybody give it
come
up.
on.
The one, the only, the man, the myth,
Oh, there we go.
the legend.
See, you say as always, but I haven't appeared on CTV with you in a very long time here in WFRV Plus.
Good things take time. Good
Yes.
things take time. And here we are talking about the Green Bay Packers as they finish the season and wrap things up from 1265 Lombardi Avenue. Obviously, all these contract extensions wanted to be announced. The Packers wanted to get their ducks in a row before Brian Gutekunst took to the mic for the first time in 6 or 7 months. Cam, what was the overarching theme for you and your takeaway from the almost 40-minute press conference we heard from Mr. Brian Gutekunst?
I feel like it's everything that I expected because this is what an end-of-season press conference is, where looks back on last season, says he's disappointed because they're not in the Super Bowl and they have to learn from it, grow, and ultimately their goal is to win a Super Bowl, and that's what they're going to strive for going into the next year. But I was really curious to hear what Goody had to say about specifically the 5 straight losses, the way that they lost games, because a couple of years ago, there felt like there was a theme toward the end of the season. The entire year this past season, there was a theme. There was a problem. And a lot of the times when you look at a problem, you want to diagnose it with something in specific. I don't know if we could pinpoint what that exactly was. Was it coaching? Was the players not doing what they were supposed to do?
I think the answer there is everything.
No, but that's the thing is, if it's everything, then the guy you want to talk to is the general manager, the guy that constructed the team. So I was curious to hear what he had to say about the overarching inability to close out games.
Yeah.
And simply put, he said, we just didn't do that on a consistent basis, and that needs to change.
Let's hear from the man himself, Brian Gutekunst.
Listen, I thought during the year that we could compete with anyone, and I think we proved that through the season. At the end of the day, we didn't evolve and develop into a team that could consistently win when we needed to, and that's what we have to do, right? But I thought our guys, there was many moments where we showed up in big moments and won some games and played well in some highly competitive situations. So again, we were 9-3-1 heading into Denver, and felt really good about our football team and where we might be able to go. It didn't turn out that way, and then I think now we're in this evaluation period of, okay, let's make sure we do everything we can so that doesn't happen again.
And Kyle, the word evolve stood out. I also picked up on something. I had to listen to the press conference about 20 times to pick out which sound bites to use for my eventual story. I know you had to do the same for your shows. He mentioned specifically the last 2 years, whether it be Matt LaFleur, 25-8 in the months of December and January, but the last 2 years, 3-9. We haven't evolved. We've had the potential, but it hasn't amounted to anything the last 2 years. He realizes that the problems that have amounted the last 2 years weren't the problems the previous years, and that is an issue they have to correct.
I think my biggest thing is I thought immediately, I went to Ryan Wood, a writer for the Green Bay Press Gazette, co-host of your show, Green Bay Nation. As soon as Brian Gutekunst walked out of the room, I was just dumbfounded a little bit on the way that this organization and its general manager doubles down on the special teams unit. Now, look, call it how it is. He mentioned that Brandon McManus hit 30 straight kicks. At one point this year, he was dead last in the league when it came to field goal percentage. He said, we weren't expecting, obviously, what happened in the playoff loss. Why? Why didn't you expect that? He's shown the ability to miss kicks before. And basically, when it's hard to take any stock into what Brian Gutekunst said about special teams today. Double down on Rich Bisaccia, which is fine. I look, we're not privy to what happens behind the scene. Not only is he the special teams coordinator, he's the assistant head coach of the football team. But the fact that Brian Gutekunst said that he thinks that the special teams unit has gotten better.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I don't know. Are we watching the same game? Like, are we watching the same game? Sure, Daniel Whelan's great. But guess what? The onside kick came back to hurt you. That's an operational failure right there, right? You got the missed kicks, which was a large part of Brandon McManus's game. You can't tell me that the special teams unit has been doing such a good job the last 3-4 seasons when that's the crux and a large part of the problems on this football team. You didn't know who your returner was for half the season. You had kicking issues the last 3 seasons. You brought in Anders Carlson, you brought in Greg Joseph, you brought in Haversick, you brought in McManus. There's another guy that I'm missing in between there. It hasn't been good enough.
Yeah.
So the Packers, that was the craziest thing to me. And I get it, maybe he just has to say that in front of a microphone. But at the end of the day, there's an accountability issue with their special teams. And they're all bought into Rich Bisaccia. And at some point, the leader of that group, who's not been able to get it done, and a large reason why they're not playing this week, is because that unit, I just think it's crazy, Cam.
And it's a control thing. You mentioned that they didn't know who their returner was, both kick and punt returner, for a majority of the season.
Josh Jacobs was out there returning punts. He hasn't done that since Alabama.
And he was the one that then volunteered, so it took a player volunteering because he knew how porous the return game was. I also add, remember what happened in Dallas? The blocked extra point returned for 2?
Unfortunately, I do.
Remember watching it, and you mentioned operationally it felt like everyone on special teams had no clue what they were doing. The tight ends didn't know what they were doing, and a lot of the times they'd put in players to protect the kicker, and it wasn't even the offensive lineman that would protect the quarterback when it usually is the case. So you're right. There's stuff that they can control that they didn't, and I agree. Doubling down on that by addressing other problems and saying consistency wasn't right, this, and that, but not specifying when it's so obvious what a problem is. Yeah. And I know you're getting heated about it, but again, that's what I expected out of an end of the season press conference. Right. You've been in enough of them that you knew he wasn't going to go out and say, special teams, we just got to get, it was horrid. He's not going to say that, even though we all know that in terms of lack of consistency and wasn't able to get it done and wasn't able to finish games, a lot of it came down to special teams.
And I'm not necessarily calling for Rich Bisaccia's job, or at least I'm not trying to do that. I just think that the Packers have an accountability issue on their coaching staff and their organization, that at some point, if that unit's not getting done, then what are you going to do to change it? Because we know the definition of insanity. It's running the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and expecting different results. The Packers keep on doing this with Rich Bisaccia, and it just doesn't get better. So that was my mind-numbing thing that came out of today's press conference.
Yeah, and again, I agree that there should have been more said in regards to that, but it's like picking and prodding at someone that doesn't want to reveal their playbook. It's like asking Matt LaFleur what he's going to run in the first play of the game.
They're never going to say it.
No, never. And he believes it. He knows it.
Does he? I don't know, because you take him for face value. That's what he said. He could have said, outside of Brandon McManus, the special, he did have an accountability when it came to Brandon McManus. He missed in the most crucial time. But he could have said the special teams unit hasn't done its job. What he did say was that they've gotten better and they've invested XYZ into that unit, which, whatever. All right, let's take a break here. Let's take a break, and then we'll talk about a little bit more.
Get you cooled down.
Yeah. All right, you're watching WFRV Plus Sports Night. Welcome back into WFRV Plus Sports Night. Kyle Malzahn, he's Cameron. He's there talking everything in the green and gold as the general manager wrapped up the 2025-26 football season in Green Bay. That is in the rearview mirror. First round exit after blowing an 18-point lead to the Chicago Bears just a few weeks after blowing another lead. 5-game losing streak. Let's hear from Brian Gutekunst. And I think this is about injuries. And then Cam and I will discuss a little bit.
I got one ring since I've been doing this, and it was a year we had more injuries than I think any other, right? So, it's nothing against any of the other teams there, but you never feel like, hey, we can't go win this game. I fully expected where we were in the middle of the playoff game to win that game and be heading to Seattle and win that game. And so again, it's I think that's the thing that makes this job so as tough as those moments are. it's what draws us a lot to it. It's the competitive nature of it.
So Kyle, you hear Goody there, and okay. Sometimes you want off-record stuff just for your just to take it with the thought of, and I'm buffering here because it's just hard to put into words.
Okay.
So obviously, Brian Gutekunst can't say, well, because of the injuries, we didn't win a Super Bowl.
Right.
But sometimes you just want to hear the off-record stuff. You almost want the off-record stuff into the microphone. So your belief in what happened to the season, which should be everyone's collective belief, in which the Packers had a good enough team to win a Super Bowl, but without Tucker Kraft, without Devontae Wyatt, without Micah Parsons, without Zach Tom, without Jaden Reed for majority of the season, without Christian Watson, because of those injuries to key players, Jordan Love down the stretch, they didn't have an equal opportunity to other teams. You could say the same about the Broncos when they didn't have Bo Nix in the AFC Championship. But the fact is, when Brian Gutekunst sits up there and says, as a general manager, I can't wallow over what just happened. I have to continue to look ahead because that's all that we can control. Gosh, sometimes I want to hear the off-record stuff. I want him to say, it frustrated me so much because this was a Super Bowl caliber team, and by week 15, it wasn't, and guess what happened? It showed.
But the minute he says that...
No, he can't. I'm just, you just want it for your almost your well-being.
Hey, I think Brian Gutekunst handled everything when it comes to the injury standpoint perfect because, the reality is they had an 18-point lead with all those players missing in the playoffs. You should be able to finish that. I thought that was the soundbite of the press conference right there when he said, I've been doing this for a long time. I have one ring. When you're up 18 points, you should win that game. And the year I won the ring, we were the most injured we've ever been. You look at all those players that were on injured reserve during the Super Bowl 45 run in the 2010, 2011 season. There's validity to that. The Packers should have won. I think I love the accountability there from Brian Gutekunst. Because at the end of the day, it is the NFL. Nobody's going to wait for you. Games go on. You got to find a way to win. But at the end of the day, that was just the reality that the Packers were put in.
It's true.
And they could never get over the fact that Micah Parsons went down. They could never come back from that. And I said this earlier to Carson a few weeks ago, is I think it was when they lost Micah Parsons, right? You look back on when they lost Tucker Kraft. That was the Panthers game. And then they go on an offensive rut against
Eagles. Yeah, in week 9.
Yep. And then I think there was another one there too where they're in a little rut, but then they figure it out. You lose Micah Parsons in that pass rush, this team that late into the season, they were just never able to find their footing. And I don't know what it's like to be in that situation as a player or inside of that locker room, but I'm sure there's a mental toll. But these guys are paid millions of dollars to execute, and they just couldn't after that injury. So
they lacked a closer, right? If the offense lost Jordan Love, it could have, which it did, toward the end of the season. They were able to operate as a Malik Willis-led offense, relying on their skill players and their offensive line to block for their quarterback and running back. And look what happened in the game in which they lost to the Bears when they were up 16-6. They only scored 16 points,
correct,
which is a large reason why they lost. When you lose your closer, look what happened in the Broncos game, in Bears Part 1, in Bears Part 2. Everything that went downhill was the fourth quarter and even the end of the third quarter of that Broncos game. Without Micah Parsons, the defense was still good, but it was something about closing out a game when you didn't have that force on the D-line, and it showed.
They barely had any pass rush at the end of the season. Rashawn Gary went silent. He went ghost.
But it was at the end of the game. The defense played well enough to win all those games.
Totally.
But it was closing the game out.
Well, the Ravens.
Yeah, that was okay. that was bad. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts for that one. But in that case, they missed Devontae Wyatt even more as the run stopper.
Totally. So, there's obviously something to losing all those players, and that's why I said this is the shoulda, woulda, coulda season because you should have went to the Super Bowl. You could have if nobody gets hurt, and you would have as well. So,
I like that.
Yeah, shoulda, woulda,
good.
coulda.
No, I know, but the way that you morphed that shoulda, woulda, coulda, and that was good.
Yeah, but the Packers, there's a lot to digest this offseason. Let's take a break here. Let's hear more from Goody on the other side. You're watching WFRV Plus Sports Night. Welcome back into WFRV Plus Sports Night. Kyle Malzahn sitting here with Cameron Ezer. Cam, this is your first first season on the road. What was it like for you, man?
God, it was nice. It was an unbelievable experience.
Yeah.
I told a few people after the fact, and I think a lot of people who travel for work, or that is a large part of their life, and you experienced it when you were on the road in Pittsburgh as well, is you don't know how much it consumes your life until you're in it.
Yeah.
And every single weekend feels like, okay, it's Arizona weekend, it's Dallas weekend, it's New York weekend, and all you're doing is looking ahead to what that road trip is and booking the flights and all that kind of stuff. But reflecting back on it and realizing that what did consume my time and my life is just an absolute dream. And being around the team more often than I was the previous 2 years, you start to understand the guys in that locker room a little bit more. You get to know them a little bit more. And it's something about being around a team, which I know that you've experienced. And I know even with the Green Bay men and the Green Bay women, like you're around them long enough where you almost become a part of that team in a way, and you can understand different tendencies and whatever it may be. It felt like I was closer to the team, and I could really engulf myself into whether it be the football or the off the field stuff. So it was really, really cool. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, you mentioned like you're so in it, and you're like, oh, this week I got to go to Arizona, and it's like, when do I do laundry? And then you get a chance when the curtains close and you got time to reflect, like, these are going to be some of the best moments of your life, man. Because there are so many people that would kill to be in the position. Right. You and everybody else in here in this covering the Green Bay Packers, they would kill to be in that position. And it is cool, the fact that not only did you cover this team on the road, but you got to see so many cool cities. All right, let's hear a little bit more from Brian Gutekunst, and we'll have some reaction.
We were 9-3-1, and I didn't think we had played particularly great football during the season. I thought we had moments, but I thought we had an opportunity to kind of round into form there in the second half of the season, and obviously it didn't work out that way. So I did think there were moments that we played at a very, very high level, championship football type level, but it wasn't consistent enough. We didn't sustain it. So those are, I think, as we go into this offseason, we continue to evaluate 2025 before we get on to 2026. It's on the front of our minds.
And Kyle, I'll say one thing, because you mentioned being on the road, and I mentioned being engulfed in not just the football, but everything that surrounds it. Being in opposing locker rooms, and by opposing, I mean opposing stadium locker rooms, right. Being, in the visitors' locker room with the Packers, after every single game, feeling those feelings of, because the Packers didn't really blow anyone out. It was a lot of, we should have done better even after wins, and what the heck was that after losses. Being on the road with a team that doesn't fully know their identity, but is just trying to find it week to week, it felt that way with this team. And I felt like what Goody just said toward the end there is, yes, we want to look ahead to 2026, but we have to continue to evaluate 2025. That season, that entire year, they need to evaluate, because it was problem after problem, even after wins. Like, there was at no point, Kyle, tell me if I'm wrong, there was at no point I walked into a locker room on the road or at home where you're like, okay, yeah, this is what this team is.
Yeah, I think that feeling wore off after week 2.
100%. You're right.
After
just the first 2 weeks, after that Browns loss.
And that happened in a 5-day stretch.
I know.
That happened in 5 days. And then after that, it was like, okay, are they gonna win this week? Are they gonna lose? Are they gonna get in their way? Like, what's Jordan Love's status? And it was just, they could never hit their stride. I mean, they did end up, I think the best game this season for the Green Bay Packers was that game in Pittsburgh. I really do. Like, you're on the road. It's the biggest game storyline wise, since Brett Favre returned to face the Packers with the Vikings. Like, there was so much hype into it. Packers were down. They come back out of the locker room, and they put together an offensive masterclass. Jordan Love put together like 20 consecutive passes. Tucker Kraft goes off. Micah Parsons has a few sacks. And each of their star players has a standout game. Jordan Love balls out. Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft. And then you go fast forward just a few weeks later, Tucker Kraft goes down. Jordan Love battles injury. And then that third quarter in Denver, I think, is going to be stinging a lot of people for a very long time.
It felt like it out of Brian Gutekunst the entire 40-minute press conference. You could sense, even though he wouldn't, yes, he said, the Packers, we were disappointed. Yes, he's going to say that.
Yeah.
But you could tell the amount of times, Kyle, he said,
I know.
We were 9-3-1 in Denver. How many times? He said like 2, 3, maybe 4 times.
Take a shot. You probably wouldn't be standing after the press conference.
Yeah.
Every time he said 9-3-1 in Denver, take a shot of your little whiskey or something like that. You wouldn't be standing at the end of the press conference.
No, because you knew it still haunts him as it would Packers fans. And honestly, the people that cover the team, yes, we don't have any rooting interest in the Packers, but the fact that this team was 9-3-1, despite all the tribulations they went through the first 14 weeks with the Jaden Reed injury, not having Christian Watson, Tucker Kraft torn ACL, Devontae Wyatt out a few weeks, before then everything crumbled, you felt 9-3-1 as, okay, this team's destined for at least a date in the divisional round. And when everything fell apart, we will all look back on this season and say, they were 9-3-1 in Denver.
I still remember the feeling when the offense got the ball back in that third quarter. Literally, I think 2 minutes before Jordan Love throws that interception going deep on a go ball to Christian Watson, I turned to Carson. I said, if they score here, like, we're looking at a Super Bowl caliber team. You're on the road against Denver, dismantling at that point that defense that was so godly, and then things just crashed down, and that's kind of all she wrote for this team. So that third quarter in Denver, man, gonna be killer. And you mentioned like people that cover the team. I'll speak for myself. I don't want to sit up on the microphone or get in front of a crowd hosting a Packer show or in the studio and continuously talk about the same problems.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do that. I want to talk about a good football team that's on their way to San Fran in Super Bowl 60.
True, yeah.
But when they continue to get in their own way, and that's what we got to talk about, that's what we have to talk about. I want to tell good stories about this football team. I want to connect the community, its viewers, and everybody in between with the good that's happening on this football team. So when you say, like, we kind of live it every single day, yeah, you live it too when this team's in a rut and all you can really talk about is the negative because they lost 5 games and blown a few, like, indescribable leads late in the season.
Can we also talk about the roller coaster of emotions of this season? This might be the first time in Green Bay Packers history, and again, check me on this, I don't fully know if this is true, in which, and if you count the tie and the loss as games the Packers didn't win, right? Because they didn't win the tie. This might be one of the very first times in which the Packers never won one game in a stretch or lost one game in a stretch or didn't win one game.
What do you mean?
They won their first 2 games, then they lost and tied. They won their next 3 games, they lost their next 2. They won their next 4 games, they lost their next 5. At no point in the season did they win a game and then they lost the next one. Or after one loss, it was a roller coaster because think about it. It's not just the 2 games. They start prepping on the previous Monday, and then you stop thinking about that game on the following Saturday before the game on Sunday.
Right.
So there were 3-week stretches at the very least in which we're talking about a Packers losing streak or a Packers winning streak.
Yeah.
It felt like this team was always in some sort of very odd disarray. And there's no such thing. There's no positive connotation with the word disarray. But even when they were winning, you kind of felt like this team is either the best team I've ever seen in my life or they're destined for, just a rut that's going to come on the other side. Like I've never seen a season in which it is such an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah. It's football, man.
Yeah, right.
Football. All right, let's take a break and then wrap up the show on the other side. You're watching WFRV Plus Sports Night. All right, welcome back to WFRV Plus Sports Night. Kyle Malzahn, Cameron is there, coming at you live from the WFRV Plus studios. Before we wrap things up, Cam, what was your favorite part about the 2025-2026 Green Bay Packers season?
Well, getting to spend time with you, Carson and Brianna. Come on,
Come on now.
that has to be it. Honestly, my favorite,
Or like favorite moment or something like that.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here.
No. I'm a fan of being put on the spot. I think the expectations surrounding this team, the last 2 years, or at least what happened 2 years ago leading into what happened last season, there were a lot of expectations because you went from a very young team to what happened to be. This team has to do something here in 2024, 2025. And coming into this year, just the expectation that surrounded this team, there was a sense of this team could go to the Super Bowl. And that was just fun to be around.
Yeah, and I think that sentiment was put to words and action when Brian Gutekunst a year ago said we want to compete for championships. So you're like, okay, it's time. Let's do it.
But you got to feel it.
Yeah.
Because in Brazil, when Jordan Love goes down, the feeling and the expectations from the year before kind of went downhill.
Yeah.
But the sense of, oh, Kyle, I can feel it. Even into November, that December, this team could go to the Super Bowl. That feeling was cool.
I think since I already mentioned Pittsburgh, I'll pivot. I think my favorite moment from this season was, and I think this reigns true for a lot of people, is that when you got the trade notification that the Packers are trading for Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that was just different.
Like, do you remember where I was?
Let me tell this story.
Oh, gosh.
Real quick. Like, we're just working in the office. You hear rumors of the Micah Parsons. He could be traded. Packers really don't do that. Like, they don't send first-round draft picks. It would never get done. Sitting in the office, and I look at my phone. I'm like, that's the real Adam Schefter account saying that the Packers just traded for Mike. Holy cow, the Packers just traded for Micah Parsons. This is at 3:20. We have a 4 o'clock newscast. Like, dude, my day just turned upside down. I'm running all over the office. Where is Cam? Where is Cam? The Packers just traded for Micah Parsons. He's nowhere to be seen. The last place I look, it's the bathroom.
Yeah, the bathroom.
There's Cameron. He's there.
I will always be in that stall.
Cam, finish up, hurry up. Packers just traded for Micah Parsons. I have 20 minutes. I need to get in the 4 o'clock
You know what's
show.
the best part is you didn't say that. You open the door and you go, Micah, and then you...
Oh, yeah. I just opened the door. I'm like, Micah. And then I just bolted out.
So I knew, obviously, you know right away because we kind of had created a plan that if this
we're on
did
Micah
happen.
watch.
Micah.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, and then obviously it comes to the plane, and we're at the airport, and like we're getting live shots in the air. It was just like that was fun. That was cool.
Yeah.
All right, put a bow on things. Now we're going to talk basketball.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot of basketball to talk.
I can't wait, man.
Right? Come on.
Almost March. Almost
Oh,
March.
the madness. The madness.
All right, man. Good convo.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.